Hey everyone, and welcome to the Skeeter Racing YouTube channel. Today, I am not working on the 240. Instead, I'm actually working on my Mustang. I wanted to go ahead and do something in the Mustang that I've been meaning to do for a while, and finally now just have the time to sit down and do it. It doesn't take long at all, but I am changing out the mufflers, or the Axlebacks, as some people call them in the Mustang world, on the Mustang. Now, I had Roush Axlebacks on the car before, and they sounded great whenever the car was mostly stock, but as I went long tube headers, catless X pipe, it became obnoxious. Now, don't get me wrong, at wide open throttle, nothing sounds better than Roush Axlebacks, but every other RPM range and every other way you're putting around town, it sounds raspy, it sounds slappy, it has like a slappish sound to it to me. So I live like probably about 1.5 miles into my neighborhood, and whenever I get on the highway, which is about 2 miles away, you can hear my car from the house. Some say that's cool, and it is cool, but practicality is not really there, and I wanted to quiet down a little bit. It's still gonna be loud, don't get me wrong. I don't want it quiet by any means. I want it loud, just not obnoxiously loud, and I want it to have a good tone to it. So today we're trading out the Roush Axlebacks for the Ford Racing Axlebacks. Now these are made by Borla for Ford Racing, so a lot of people say they sound a lot like the Borla S-types, and I'm pretty excited to hear what they sound like on my car. You can hear videos all day long and kind of get an idea, but there's nothing that really gives you that in-person sound, and whenever like you start up the car and the way the car hits you, whenever you start it up. So I'm really excited to hear what it sounds like. I know it's gonna sound good. I just don't know how loud it's gonna be exactly or how quiet it's gonna be. Anyways, let's get started. Here's just some of the simple tools you're gonna need to do this job. You're gonna need a 13mm bolt for the clamps, and there's also a 13mm bolt on one of the brackets that I take off. It makes it just a little bit easier for me. Depending on your setup, what mufflers you have stock. If you don't, I'm using this big chunga right here because I was ignorant whenever I first put these on, and I gave it all the ugga-duggas with this, and it did not need that. It was ridiculous. And so I'm going to loosen the bolt with this, reapply it with this, because this has plenty of torque to get the job done. And you may need a ratchet depending on your muffler type to get to this bracket if you want to take it off that way, and you may need an extension like this. I will be honest with you guys, I already did one side. Here's the Roush one. Roush, Ford Racing. And also, I have some rags because I just washed the car, and whenever I'm getting underneath it, even though I let it dry for quite a while, it's still dripping water everywhere. Some gloves, obvious reasons, and you're gonna need a flashlight. Now I have the car jacked up right now just a little bit. I have some jack stands under there, but you don't actually need jack stands. You don't actually have to have the car jacked up to do this. Trust me, I've done this on my back in a driveway before, and I was able to change out the Axlebacks, no problem. But it does help if you have the area and a flat surface and the jack stands. You might as well jack it up just a little bit to give you some more wiggle room underneath the car. But always use jack stands, be safe. Here you can see the difference between the Roush Axleback and the Ford Racing one. As you can see, the Roush one is really a straight through design. This is kind of almost like a glass pack design, which would explain the slappiness. If you've heard glass packs on other cars, you know that they're very raspy, very slappy. And the Ford Racing is an actual muffler style. I'm sure somehow it curves over in here, it goes up and over. Anyways, it's baffled in here, and that's what quiets it down a little bit. You can also see that to Ford Racing here, size does matter because they made their exhaust tip way bigger than the Roush one. All right, we are under the car here, and we're gonna be looking at this bolt right here. So this is the bolt that clamps your axle back right here to the over the axle pipe, which goes all the way up to your H pipe, your X pipe, whatever your car has. That goes up, over, and they connect right at this joint here. So this is a 13mm from the factory, unless you changed out to a different exhaust style that gave you a different over the axle pipe. It should still be a 13mm. So we're gonna start by loosening this. This is the bolt that I was talking about earlier that I used the impact on, that I did not need to, that I used the big impact on, that I did not need to, so it is way too tight right now. And I'm gonna use my big impact to take it off. All right, now with the clamp off, just slide it back on the Axleback here. Now we're gonna move to the front of the muffler here. You're gonna slide forward. This is your back bumper here. And now we're gonna take the muffler off of this rubber bushing right here. And you're gonna slide this off this way. I cannot do this one-handed. It does help if you spray some like WD-40 or some kind of really any sort of lubricant on both sides of it so that you can slide this off and leave this bracket attached. You're just gonna take it out of the bottom one here. Once you have the muffler out of this bushing here, you're gonna work your way back. And this is just my suggestion here. You may be able to get it out without taking this off, but there is another bracket back here that holds the muffler. So this bracket right here, there is a rod that goes into it on this side, and there is a rod that goes into it on this side, right here. Now this is pretty difficult to take off if you still have the over the axle pipes on. So what I do is I just take this bolt right here and I take it off and drop the whole thing down as one unit. So first you're gonna take off the bushing up front, then you're gonna take off this bracket here, this bracket right here, and then the whole thing will just come down. Now you don't have to do this. If you wanna finesse and try to get this muffler out of this with leaving it all attached, that's fine. But I've found it's easier if you just take this bolt out and just drop the whole thing down. So I'm gonna do that now. Okay, now we have them side by side here. This is that bracket that I was telling you about with the one bolt. Goes right here. You'll get it from the bottom side. Now you can literally just slide this off. I'm gonna do this one-handed for you guys. Slide it off and take it and put it on your new one. Now something a ton of people do not know, these brackets right here are meant to be bent. So if you install this, your mufflers are sitting kind of wonky and they're not looking good, bend these until they look good. And so many people I see just bolt these on no matter how they look, no matter how sideways they are. You'll have one muffler going up and one going down like this. Bend these right here. That's what they're made for. They just tack these on, they get them as close as they think in their factory, and they weld them. So, bend them. Also, they could be bent from shipping. There's a ton of reasons that these would be bent. Make them look good. Come on, guys. Okay, from here, whenever I go to install this back into the car, I will put this rod into the front bushing that I told you about. We left it on the bracket. So I'll slide that in. And then while that slid in and holding it in place, I will then lift up the back end and I'll have that bolt in my hand and I will hand tighten that bolt back to where it was just so it holds it. Then you can impact it, ratchet it, whatever you want to do. Get this in place, then line up this guy right there. And once it's all bolted up, set the car back down, let all your suspension settle, then adjust the muffler tips. Sometimes if you have the car jacked up, and you set your muffler tips where you want them, but the suspension isn't under a load, as soon as you put the car down, they're actually going to move, and they're not going to look good anymore. So set the car down. Like I said, you can do this without jacking the car up even. Set the car down, then adjust your mufflers, make them look good. All right, I've got them both installed now. They're both set right. I bent the brackets where I thought they looked good, nice and center in the holes there. As you see, pretty even spacing all the way around it. And something I didn't mention, you should wear safety glasses. Take it from this guy. If there's any chance that something is going to get in my eyes, it always does. And even with these on, something got in my eyes. Enough of my rambling though, let's listen to the difference. Here's a before. years after.